Well, that brings me to one of my favorite movies of yours, is Apocalypto.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when the Mayans were running things, like, who could have ever thought when they had such an incredibly sophisticated society, unbelievable construction, like the stuff that they had built, that one day you would just walk through there and there's nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing and nobody.
In fact, there's something, because it's interesting. Somebody was flying by what they thought was a volcano in the 30s, some buzzboy. And he thought, hey, that's somebody built that. Wait a minute, there's 4 by 8 foot bricks. That's man-made. And it is literally the biggest pyramid in the world. It's bigger than the ones in Egypt, and it's in Guatemala.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Yeah, it's a recent discovery, right?
Well, not that recent. I was, maybe 20 years ago, I visited. I went down there with the archaeologist, a guy named Richard Hansen, who's from Idaho or someplace. And he's down there with his family. He's been working tirelessly for like 30 years trying to extract this pre-classic city from the jungle. And there's not a bunch of tourists. All the pyramids in Tikal would fit inside the one big pyramid in El Mirador.
Really?
Yeah. It's a monster. And so that tells you that the pre-classic civilization was bigger and grander and more sophisticated than the civilizations that came after it.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Well, it is unbelievable how, like, when you, the accounts of, like, people that visited Mexico and visited the Aztecs, like, what the markets looked like and how insane it was and how gorgeous it was, and then just disease.
Yeah, disease. Or I don't know if it was disease or what. I think the people were pretty dissatisfied. It would have been hard for Cortez, with his limited numbers, to actually take over a civilization like that unless they kind of happened upon a civilization that was pretty dissatisfied with the way things were going.
Yeah.
So I think they had people to help them sort of
I'm
rebel.
sure. Yeah. When you're making a movie like Apocalypto, I mean, that's a crazy undertaking. You're making an entire movie where there's no English in it at all, and it's a blockbuster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It was fun.
That's one of the best movies, man. It's a fucking great movie.
Well, because I think it's scary because nobody's speaking your language. And you're looking at indigenous peoples who you, and because they're not speaking your language, you totally kind of buy it. And you can buy the horror and the primal nature of the story you want to tell. And really, it's just a series of fears, one after the other, you know, being chased by, you know, scary guys, or eaten by wild animals, or, you know, hit by blow guns. It's all like a series of these things. But I think basically what I was doing was trying to talk about our time now and the civilization that we live in, and how close are we to collapse, and what are the things that lead to collapse. You know, it's environmental stuff, it's human sacrifice.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that.
Kinda.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
We just dress it up.
Yep.
When you find out medications are killing people and they keep prescribing them, and they do it for money, that's kind of sacrifice. When you find out that wars are irresponsible.
They're not just wars.
Not just.
No.
They're for money.
We send our young people over there to die, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not. I mean, I love this. I love the warrior. I do. I love the warrior, but I hate the war.
Yeah.
And
well, we hate an unjust war.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a mess, but the human sacrifice aspect is alive and well in our society, I think.
It really is. It's just dressed up in a different way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, rhetoric around it, but they've always been able to justify it. Like in Apocalypto, it was like, yeah, so the crops will be better. Hey, we'll just, you know.
Yeah, kill a few people.
Yeah. And then I had all these people come out of the woodwork. Hey, we're archaeologists and scientists, and that never happened. So there's this revisionism about it, too, that it didn't happen. But there are accounts from the time where, yes, people did witness these things. And of course, I had a battery of archaeologists and scientists and professors on my own that say, yeah, well, this stuff did happen, and here's the, you know, the depictions of it in paintings and images, and, you know, so it did happen. So, you know.
When you set out to make a movie like that, like, first of all, what brings you to that? Did you get the script first? Like, what was it an idea that you had in your head?
It was. It just came from in here, and I was working on something, and a buddy of mine said, "So what do you want to do next?" I said, man, I want to direct something, and I always want to direct a chase film." He said, "What kind of chase?" I said, "A foot chase." He said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, people chasing you. I mean, there's something kind of primal and scary about a foot chase." And I think in order to have a foot chase, you can't have a society where there's any kind of cars or anything like that. Otherwise, you have a car chase. But I want to film a foot chase like it's a car chase. And he said, "Oh." I said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking if you go back before Columbus discovered America, you know." And it's like people assume that Columbus discovered America and then life began. I said, "I want to know what was happening right before he got there. Before he got there." And I said, so I had this idea that you see all this stuff going on and there's no time period on it, and then all of a sudden you date it by the arrival of Europeans. And I thought it's kind of like the Rod Serling, you know, Planet of the Apes ending.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like it's kind of a cool ending. And he said, "Oh wow." And he said, "Where do you think Columbus landed?" I said, "Why not? Let's look." So I looked up, and the first peoples he encountered were Mayan trading canoes off the coast of Honduras. And I thought, cool. What was happening in Honduras, you know? And you look at these towns and pyramids and temples and stuff at that time. And then the story was born from there. And, of course, then we read the book by Jared Diamond, Collapse. I read the Mayan Bible, the Popol Vuh, and, you know, so I tried to delve into what they believed and what their civilization was like. And they had concepts, as we do, of heaven and hell, of punishment or reward, you know. It was a little different, quite a bit different, actually. In fact, when I went down to the archaeological sites at El Mirador, they dug something up. And it was like, well, what is it? And they said, we don't know. There was this carved image in the stone of this Mayan warrior drinking, and he had an ear spool. And it was like, So they dug further and further, and it went like 26 meters down. And it was the entire story of the Popol Vuh. Of the twins going into hell and getting their father's head and swimming back, and it's this crazy story, and it kind of dated that book because I think it was almost 3,000 years old. This mural, this carving, so it tells you that the story is pretty old. And they thought initially it was probably back in the 1300s, but this confirmed that it was at least 2,600 years old, something like that. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. That to be there when they're digging that stuff up is mind-blowing.